My name is Dale Kowalski. Until 6 months ago, the most difficult thing I had ever fixed was an old tractor engine. I own a small repair shop outside a quiet town. I fix tractors, boat motors, and washing machines. That is my whole world, or at least, it used to be. Then one morning, a ship landed in my back field. It was smooth and silver, with no noise and no smoke. A door opened, and a tall, calm being stepped out. She had soft blue skin and kind eyes. She said her name was Vethik, and she came from a place called Kalinor. She said her people had found humans by accident, through an old radio signal from Earth. After that, they became curious about us. I did not believe her at first. I thought someone was playing a joke on me, but when she showed me her ship up close, I understood this was real. She said her people needed help, not from a soldier, not from a scientist, from an engineer. I laughed and told her I only fix small machines, not spaceships. She smiled and said that was exactly why they wanted me. She explained that her people were brilliant with machines, but they always followed strict rules and careful calculations. They rarely thought in a simple way. She said humans, especially engineers like me, often solved problems using instinct and imagination. I still didn't fully understand what she meant, but I agreed to go with her. Partly because I was curious, and partly because she offered enough money to fix the roof of my shop. 3 days later, I was standing inside a spaceship called the Ashenvale. It was the royal ship of the Kalinor Kingdom, carrying their young prince, 40 crew members, and important cargo. The ship was beautiful, filled with soft lights and quiet hallways, but something was wrong. The ship had stopped moving. Its main engine, called the drive core, had locked completely. It was like a car engine that suddenly refused to start, no matter what anyone tried. The ship was floating in a dangerous area of space called the Long Dark. There were no nearby stations, no quick rescue, and no other ships close enough to help. If the engine could not be fixed soon, they would drift further into danger. I met 11 of their engineers. They were intelligent beings, calm and serious, wearing neat uniforms. When they spoke, they used long technical words that I did not understand. They had already tried many advanced methods to fix the drive core. They used precise tools, careful calculations, and gentle adjustments. Nothing worked. The engine remained stuck, like a bolt that refused to turn no matter how carefully you tried to loosen it. Vethik led me to the engine room. The room was large, filled with glowing panels and soft humming sounds, though the humming was much weaker than it should have been. The 11 engineers stood near the core, looking tired and worried. When they saw me, a human wearing simple work clothes and carrying a metal toolbox, they looked confused. One of them asked Vethik quietly if this was truly the right choice. She did not answer. She only nodded toward me and asked me to begin. I walked closer to the drive core. It was a large cylinder-shaped machine, covered with smooth metal and soft blue light. I asked one of the engineers to explain what already happened. He said the ship had passed through a sudden change in temperature during the journey. The core had become extremely hot, then suddenly cooled down too fast. This caused 2 important metal parts inside the machine to lock tightly together. Their instruments showed no damage, no broken parts, only a complete jam. I listened carefully. In my many years of fixing old machines, I had faced something similar many times. Metal parts, when they heat up and cool down quickly, can expand and shrink unevenly. Sometimes, this causes 2 parts to stick together very tightly, even without any actual damage. It is not really broken. It is just stuck. The engineers had been trying very gentle, very careful methods to loosen the stuck parts. They were afraid that using too much force might damage something important. Their instruments told them the mechanism was extremely delicate, so they moved carefully, almost too carefully. I understood immediately what the real problem was. They were treating a simple stuck joint like a fragile, complicated puzzle. I opened my toolbox and pulled out my old hammer. It was nothing special, just a basic hammer with a wooden handle, one I had used for many years back at my shop. When the engineers saw it, their expressions changed from confusion to concern. One of them asked, almost nervously, what I planned to do with such a simple tool. I explained as clearly as I could. Sometimes, when 2 metal parts lock together like this, gentle pressure does not help. What is needed is a quick, precise strike in the right place, to break the lock without damaging anything else. It is not about strength. It is about hitting the exact right spot, at the exact right angle, with just enough force. The engineers looked unsure. This idea seemed too simple for such an advanced machine. Vethik, however, trusted me. She had seen my work back on Earth, fixing engines that seemed impossible to repair. She asked the others to give me a chance. After a long pause, they agreed, mostly because they had no better options left. I studied the drive core carefully. I placed my hand gently against the metal, feeling for slight differences in temperature and texture, the way I always did with stuck engines back home. After a few minutes, I found the exact spot I was looking for, a small section where the pressure seemed to be concentrated the most. I lifted my hammer. The room became completely silent. Even the constant background hum of the ship seemed to fade into stillness. 11 engineers, along with Vethik, watched closely, holding their breath. I focused, took a slow breath, and struck the metal with a firm, controlled hit. The sound that followed was not a loud crash, it was a deep, soft release, almost like the whole ship was breathing out after holding its breath for days. A moment later, the lights around the drive core flickered, then grew brighter. A low humming sound returned, steady and strong. The engine had started again. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then, one by one, the engineers stepped closer to check their instruments. Their expressions shifted from worry to surprise, and finally, to quiet amazement. The readings, which had been showing warning signs for days, quickly returned to safe, normal levels. Vethik smiled and said something I will never forget. She said this might be the simplest repair she had ever seen, and also the most impressive one. Word of what happened spread quickly through the ship. Crew members whispered about the human engineer who fixed the impossible problem using nothing but a hammer. Some of them looked at me with confusion, while others looked at me with genuine respect. I felt a little embarrassed by all the attention, but also proud. After all, back home, this was just another normal day at my shop. Later that day, I was asked to meet the young prince personally. I was nervous, unsure how to behave properly in front of royalty from another world. Vethik guided me through simple customs, teaching me how to greet him respectfully. When I finally stood before him, he looked much younger than I expected, with calm, curious eyes. Through a small translation device, he asked me directly how a human, without access to their advanced technology, managed to fix something his best engineers could not repair. I thought carefully before answering. I told him honestly that his engineers were far more intelligent than me in almost every way. They understood complex calculations and advanced science that I could never fully learn. But sometimes, all that precision made people afraid to use simple force, even when it was exactly what was needed. I explained that back on Earth, especially in small repair shops like mine, we learn to trust our hands and our instincts, not just careful numbers. Sometimes, a machine does not need a complicated solution. Sometimes, it just needs someone brave enough to give it a firm, confident push in the right direction. The prince listened closely, then smiled warmly. He said this was a valuable lesson, one his people could learn from. He thanked me sincerely, and said the Kalinor kingdom would always remember what I had done for them. Before I returned home, the prince offered me a small ceremonial gift, a beautifully designed metal plaque with symbols representing bravery and cleverness. I still keep it on the wall of my shop today, right next to my old calendar and a photo of my first car. When I finally returned to Earth, everything looked the same as before. Quiet fields, a small workshop, and familiar tools scattered across my workbench. But something inside me had changed. I now understood that skills learned through simple, everyday problems could be valuable in ways I never imagined. Since that day, my little shop has become a bit less ordinary. Every few months, a strange ship quietly lands in my back field, always at night, always without much warning. Sometimes it is engineers from Kalinor, asking for advice on a stubborn machine. Other times, it is beings from entirely different worlds, curious about the human who fixed a royal ship using nothing more than a simple hammer. I always welcome them the same way I welcome any customer, with a warm greeting, a cup of coffee, and an open mind. I listen carefully to their problems, then walk around whatever machine they brought, tapping gently here and there, feeling for that one specific spot where a firm, confident touch might solve everything. Sometimes, their problems are far too advanced for me to understand, and I simply admit that, honestly. But more often than not, hidden beneath layers of advanced technology, their problems turn out to be surprisingly familiar, close in spirit to a jammed bolt, a stuck gear, or an overheated part. The same kinds of problems I've handled my entire life. I've come to realize that the universe, no matter how advanced it becomes, still runs on very basic principles. Metal still expands and contracts, parts still get stuck, and sometimes, no matter how complicated a machine looks, the right solution is beautifully simple. People often ask me if I feel nervous, stepping onto strange ships filled with unfamiliar technology from worlds I cannot even name. Honestly, I don't feel nervous at all. I simply see it as another job, another machine, waiting patiently for someone willing to understand it. My neighbors back home still don't fully believe my stories, and honestly, I don't blame them. It does sound unbelievable, a small-town mechanic repairing a royal spaceship with nothing but an old hammer. But every time a strange, quiet ship lands gently in my back field, I smile to myself, grab my toolbox, and walk outside, ready for whatever unusual problem awaits me next. In the end, I think that's the real lesson from everything that happened. You don't always need the most advanced tools or the most complicated knowledge to solve a difficult problem. Sometimes, all you truly need is patience, careful observation, and the simple confidence to try something others might consider too basic. My hammer, the same one I've owned for many years, now feels a little different in my hand. It still looks the same, plain and simple, but I carry it with a new sense of pride. It has traveled further than I ever imagined possible, helping fix problems across worlds I once thought only existed in stories. And honestly, whenever someone asks me for the secret behind fixing something so advanced, with something so ordinary, I always give them the same simple answer. Sometimes, the most complicated problems just need someone brave enough and humble enough to hit them exactly where it matters most.